For everyone who
Hello and very warm welcome to everyone tuning in from around the world for the Global Vaccine Logistic Summit. Good morning to friends joining in from the Americas, and good afternoon and good evening to those of you joining in from Europe, Middle East, and Africa and Asia. My name is Reggie John, and I'm the editor of Indian Transport and Logistic News, one of the three publications from Stat Media Group, a trade media house founded in 1986. As per the latest updated information available on the official website of World Health Organization, updated as on 3rd November 2020, There are 47 COVID-19 vaccines in various clinical evaluation states, and there are 155 COVID-19 vaccine candidates in preclinical evaluation stage. These vaccines are of various types and developed on different platforms. Some of them are single-dose vaccines, while many others are double-dose with the timing of the doses ranging from 14 to 56 days. While the world's best scientists and pharmaceutical companies work hard to find a successful COVID vaccine, the challenge is on the world transport and logistics sector to ensure the safe distribution of this vaccine to everyone on this planet. The distribution and the logistic of the vaccine is as challenging and complex as the discovery of them. The Global Vaccine Logistic Virtual Summit is organized by Indian Transport and Logistic News and presented by Frankfurt Airport, one of the Europe's top cargo airports. The event is supported by Airbridge Cargo Airlines, Moscow headquartered all-cargo carrier and part of the Volga-Depner Group, and GMR Hyderabad Air Cargo, a key Indian cargo hub for temperature-controlled pharmaceutical export. The purpose of this virtual summit with the theme, A Shot in the Arm, investigating novel strategies for COVID-19 vaccine logistics, is to make sense of the complexities involved in transporting and distributing a vaccine of many types. Prepare the logistic industry to be ready with multiple plans to provide the capacity when the demand arises, and to provide a platform for information sharing and facilitate industry collaboration. In the next 5 years, you will listen to keynotes from government representatives, one-to-one interviews with senior leaders representing airports, airlines, and temperature-controlled solution providers, roundtable with industry organizations that are coming together to collaborate to address the COVID-19 vaccine distribution, and finally, a panel discussion with various stakeholders on air freight industry's readiness to take up this challenge. A few housekeeping announcements. Except for speakers, we have muted the audio and video for all participants. Those of you who would like to ask questions, please key in your questions in the Q&A tab that you find at the bottom of your screen. I would request speakers to mute their audio when they are not speaking. The webinar is being recorded, and an edited version of the webinar will be made available shortly on our YouTube channel. Alternatively, every participant will get a mail with the link of the recorded webinar videos. Now it's my pleasure to welcome Max Conradi, the Senior Vice President Cargo, Frankfurt Airport, to make his opening keynote. Max, as always, it's a pleasure to have you with us. Can we have Max on the screen? Yes, Max, we can see you.
Great.
Yeah.
Because I haven't been able to see myself until now.
Yeah, we can see you. And the audio is clear.
Thank you very much, Reggie,
for
the introduction and the warm welcome. And also from my side, a warm welcome for everyone who's sharing the stream now in the webinar. And for us, it's very important to be part of the webinar, to make such a webinar possible, as well be sharing our thoughts and knowledge within the webinar, because vaccine transportation, the pharma lanes, they are not just cargo. They're a lifeline for everyone nowadays in these times of a pandemic, and therefore it's for utmost important for everyone to have reliable, safe, and fast cargo operations in place. And the COVID-19 pandemic and the resulting worldwide lockdowns have shown the fragility of the global supply chains in an alarming way. And even with the drastic cut in cargo capacity on passenger aircrafts, we expected or seen here in Frankfurt, the air cargo industry proved its vital role in society by providing crucial personal protection equipment as earlier in this year, in the month April and May especially, and only air freight can continuously connect industry and international markets when other supply chains collapse, as we've seen earlier this year. And alone in Frankfurt Airport, we've seen in a couple of weeks over 3.5 billion protective masks imported in more than 20,000 shipments without a glitch. And pharmaceutical exports nearly doubled due to the disruption of the sea freight. And this is not only a picture that we see in Frankfurt, it's a picture that can be seen worldwide. And there have been big challenges for all partners involved, but we have been successful this far. And there's almost no severe interruption in handling during these intense times. But I'll get back to that topic a little bit later. But let me start first to give you an idea of the traffic development we have here in Frankfurt, because I think it's very much a very good example on many, many other airports, not only in Europe, but with talks with any other participants that operating in the worldwide cargo supply chains. I saw it's very much the same figures, and as you see, also in the often known Seabury data as well. So at the beginning of the year, a little bit lower numbers here in Frankfurt with an international economic downturn. But then in March, where the first lockdowns in Europe started, and in Germany, there had been a collapse in passenger traffic. Almost no international flights being offered, even in Frankfurt. And we see some domestic traffic, but all the capacity, the belly cargo capacity, it's been evaporated from one day to another. And in Frankfurt, belly capacity is one of the key factors as a success factor for Frankfurt. About 50% of all the cargo in Frankfurt has been handled normally as belly cargo. So with this resulting loss, the industry changed. It proved its ability to adapt very, very fast. And in 1 or 2 weeks, it kind of a new cargo stream kicked in with a lot of charter cargo. We saw over 40 airlines here in Frankfurt offering so-called Praetors, or passenger aircraft converted as a kind of an cargo airplane. And so the volumes, the demand of the protective gear has been able to be handled here in Frankfurt. And not only the structure on the air side changed, being also the character of the import-export share. In normal times, have been Germany known as a large export-oriented country, that our export share is roughly between 50 to 60%. Now it's flipped up to 60, 70% of import goods at a time. So all the ground handling, the cargo handling, everyone has to adapt into this quite new structure in cargo handling. And we have seen here about 150 movements a day of cargo aircraft in those times, and now again, because of the growing demands. And we stopped not there, because when the first wave of protective gear demand has reached us, we soon anticipated that there'd be a surge, an intense surge on a vaccine or medications against the COVID-19 disease. So we established a working group as early as April this year, consisting working groups in the air cargo community on how to adapt to this upcoming demand. And this is the next challenge that lies ahead, to extend the supply chain of treatments and vaccination fighting this pandemic. And proudly to say Frankfurt is ready for it. We have in 2019 handled already about 120,000 tons of vaccines, medications, and other pharmaceutical goods. So we have already proven that we are able to handle that huge demands. But it is for utmost important to have an intense look on the processes and have this look in every detail, landside and airside, export and import processes, and not to forget the security issues as well, including contingency planning. If a warehouse has been maybe closed down due to a COVID-19 infection in a shift or something like that. That's what we do to prepare as an airport, but not only as an airport. We can only achieve this goal to have a reliable stream of cargo flow with all the partners being here at the airport responsible for this cargo handling. And we stopped not at the processes, we increased the infrastructure. With Swissport, early this week, have a new facility opened here in Frankfurt Airport, adding additional 1,500 square meters of temperature controlled area to up to in total around 12,000 square meters of temperature controlled handling capacity in Frankfurt. And SCS, a subsidiary of WFS here in Frankfurt, has gained CEIV pharma certification as well as GDP pharma certification recently this month. So finally, over 75% of all the transport routes you find here at the airport are already certified. And even we stop not there, because we have added new ultra-modern thermal transporters to our ground equipment to ensure that necessary transport of all the goods are assured on the apron as well. So they allow pinpoint transportation of temperature-sensitive products in range of -20 to +30, even though we need much lower temperatures, maybe in the first wave of the vaccines. And those transporters will have an electronic temperature monitoring and tracking system. Tracking is important when it comes to vaccines. And so, all in all, we are well prepared, as all the other cargo handlers here in Frankfurt, because we have not only done it yet, because we do it since more than 2 decades with our trained staff and established processes. But finally, staying together in the crisis, sharing information in between, and if it's necessary, giving a helping hand to partners within the supply chain before they're struggling with operational issues. These are the most important success factors that come on top of the infrastructure, the well-known processes. So we established those working groups to establish new ways of sharing information within the community, to strengthen the cooperation in between everyone, have regular calls with all the partners involved, to making sure everything runs smoothly, and securing the operations as a main focus. We put so much effort, everyone put so much effort into this. All the problems and challenges were mentioned transparently, so we could find a solution together very easily and quickly, even as we are competitors, to support each other in this very, very specific situation. And we also started a survey and asked airlines, handling agents, forwarders, and so on, to give more information on the situation, what is going on, because sharing information is so important. And we established a so-called Frankfurt Climate Index to give an idea of what is happening here at the airport. Every company involved adopted a new situation, so the supply chain can be established and can be resilient. And all the customs and other authorities reacted very flexible, even in Germany, as you probably not adapt in the first place. And if each and every partner has put its effort into this process. process. To put a long story short, our intensive commitment to building a resilient cargo community has finally paid off. And the crisis has connected us even more as a community, not only within the boundaries of Frankfurt, but also on a global level. And this is what is today: sharing knowledge, sharing recent information on farmer supply chains to master the upcoming tremendous tasks. Thank you. Reggie, would you like to take over?
Thanks, Max. Before I let you go, I just want to ask one question. Max, can you keep your video on?
My video is no. Okay. I'm allowed to be on the screen again. Great.
Yeah. Before I let you go, I just want to ask a couple of questions. I think as we speak, you have a new freighter airline flying into Frankfurt, and I think it will be taking off. SF Airline. There's a significant amount of capacity building at Frankfurt Airport, and this is being done in partnership with your other stakeholders. You have GDP certified cargo handlers. You have IATA SEAF certified cargo handlers. We have our own SpiceJet freighters flying in from India to Frankfurt on a regular basis.
A very new established service in Frankfurt as well, starting this summer.
Just want to understand in terms of COVID vaccine, a lot of things are still unknown as to what is the volume that's going to come in for the air freight industry. But India and China are some of the key manufacturing places or countries where the COVID vaccines are actually being manufactured, as and when they have the final approval. What kind of freighter schedules are you going to see maybe in the first half of next year?
We expect a lot of charter flights again, because handling the vaccines at very low temperatures, they often use nitrogen to cool down the vaccines, and there we are in the dangerous goods declaration framework, and therefore we have to rely on special freighter services carrying those vaccines in the first wave. So we expect to see in specific freighters handling those vaccines, and therefore we will prepare to adopt two, to have at a pinpoint of one freighter coming down here in Frankfurt, being at the position to be ready to unload and to carry the vaccines to the warehouses in the very shortest times. That is exactly what we're preparing to handle.
Thanks, Max. I know that you will be joining my colleague Surya in one of the segments ahead, in which you will talk about the community initiatives and the collaborations. Thanks once again, Max, for being with us, and hope to see you.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Surya, it is over to you for the next segment.
Thank you, Reggie, and good afternoon, everyone. I'm Surya Kanod, Associate Editor with Indian Transport and Logistics News, and it's my privilege to welcome our first keynote speaker for today, Mr. Ranga Chandrasekhar, the Deputy Drugs Controller at the Central Drugs Standard Control Organization, or CDSO as we know it. CDSO comes under the Directorate General of Health Services in the Ministry of Health and Family Welfare for the Government of India. It is the national regulatory authority for Indian pharmaceuticals and medical devices, and serves the parallel function to the European Medicines Agency of the European Union, the Pharmaceuticals and Medical Devices Agency of Japan, and the Food and Drug Administration of the United States. Welcome, Mr. Ranga.
Hello. So can you hear me? Hello. Yeah. Surya, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, sir. We can't
Yeah.
see you. Can you just move your video a little, your camera a little down?
My camera is open.
Yeah, but you just need to move it a little down, sir. We cannot see your face.
I
Yes.
cannot see myself. That is why. Yeah. Is it
Yeah,
okay?
it's a little better now. Yeah.
But I cannot see myself on the screen.
Oh, is it?
Yeah. So, yeah. I think
Move
now.
it a little more down.
Yes. Is it okay now? Yeah.
Yes, it's perfect now.
Yeah. Thank you, Surya. And then good afternoon to everyone. It's my pleasure to be with all of you today. Today, the organizers have taken up a very important webinar on the investigating of novel strategies for COVID-19 vaccine logistics. So, as you know, the entire world is gripped with the pandemic. So, because of that, we are not able to meet in face to face. But at the same time, it is a reason for us meeting today. Having said that, the entire world is seeing the vaccine as a solution to this pandemic. We should all compliment the scientists and the pharmaceutical industry for squeezing the timelines between 1 to 1.5 years for development of these vaccines. So otherwise, the vaccine development itself usually would have taken 5 to 10 years. So once the vaccine is available, the next step is that to distribute this vaccine to all the needy persons, citizens across the world. And that's where the logistics comes into place. Why we are talking this now? That is because some of the vaccine development is in the final stages. So what we hear from other countries and what the experience in our own country is that, so some of the products are in phase 3 trials. That means they can be, the results can come out in at very short time. And once they are there, because if they are successful, then the vaccine will be rolled out. And then the role of the distribution logistics comes into play. So having said that, if the vaccine is available and if it is not able to reach the patient as the common citizen, then there's no purpose of the vaccine. So that is why the logistics has to be planned very well in advance. So what is the difference between the earlier vaccines and the current vaccine is that, so it is an unprecedented situation that a vaccine is needed for all the maybe more than 7 billion population in the world today. And then how we need to organize ourselves, how we need to create some novel strategies so that these vaccines reach to all the countries, all the remote corners in each of the countries. So these are the challenges that we will be facing maybe in few months from now. And it is good that everyone is thinking in those lines, how to address these challenges and also trying to find out the solutions. Having said that, I will just briefly touch upon some of the points so that we can understand what are the issues in the logistics. The most important issue that everyone, the regulator, the manufacturer, the person who takes the vaccine, who looks at is that whether the potency is preserved during the transportation or not, and whether the cost is economical or not. So from the logistic perspective, these two are the most important points. And why preserving the potency is a challenge. So that is because, as you know, the vaccines are manufactured with various technologies. And because of this pandemic, so we see a lot newer technologies that are being used to manufacture these vaccines. So if you ask me, the current vaccine development, the products can be differentiated into 4 buckets. The first one is inactivated vaccines. Inactivated vaccines mainly consist of whole virion. The virus is grown and then it is inactivated and is converted into a vaccine. The second one is the recombinant protein vaccine. Here the protein is identified. Here in the case of coronavirus, the surface protein, mainly SMN proteins. These are identified. These are synthesized through cell-based recombinant DNA technology and then converted into vaccines. Other one is viral vector vaccines, where the virus are being used as a carrier for this gene, which in the in vivo in the human body converts itself into a protein, the protein of interest for us. And then there are nucleic acid vaccines and the mRNA vaccines. These are broadly these are 4 or 5 buckets which we can classify the current COVID-19 vaccines. So if you see, either the vaccine are proteins or they are living organisms. So because of these two, they are very much sensitive to the temperature and to the moisture, so that the storage has to be very stringent. So normally, what all vaccines that are being under development, if you see, there are two broad temperature zones that are required. One is 2 to 8 degrees. Many of the vaccines that are manufactured are being required to be stored at 2 to 8 degrees. And the second one is minus 18 degrees. So some of the vaccines, which are viral vector vaccines or adenovirus vaccines, some of them are required to be stored at minus 18 degrees centigrade. So I recall that, I mean, I don't recall any of the vaccines which require minus 18 degrees centigrade in the finished form. So normally the bulk are being stocked and then transported at minus 18, but not the final vaccine product. So that is why this becomes a challenge to the logistic industry, how to maintain the cold chain and then effectively transport with a minimum transit time. As far as the India is concerned, there are about 10 manufacturers who have started development of vaccines in the country. Each of the manufacturers have not only limited to one technology, they are trying more than one technologies. Out of these 10 manufacturers, a number of products are there. Almost, I can say, about 22 products, candidates are there. Candidate vaccines are being under development. So they are at different phases of development. Some are at the formulation development stage. Some are at animal toxicity studies or preclinical toxicity study stage. Third, and the other category are at clinical development phase. So out of these, if you leave the other two categories like the formulation development and then animal toxicity studies, which may take more time. So there are about 3 vaccines which are currently under phase 2 and phase 3, which are under development. And there's another vaccine, two vaccines which are phase 1 by 2, so, clinical phase development. So coming to the advanced, so phase 3 is the final stage. So once phase 3 becomes successful, then the manufacturer may obtain a marketing authorization for the product. Two of the vaccines are almost in the phase 3, and they are out of these two. One is collaborated along with the manufactured with the technology from other countries. So one is the indigenous manufactured technology, and then the third one is a vaccine, so which is being imported and then tried for clinical development here. So that is under phase 2, and then it will go to the phase 3. Out of these 3, so 2 require storage temperature at 2 to 8, and 1 requires a storage temperature at minus 18 degrees centigrade. Then having said that, so if I'll briefly touch upon the size of the Indian vaccine industry. So India is one of the largest vaccine manufacturers in the world. It has the maximum capacity to manufacture vaccines. So apart from this COVID-19 vaccine, so normally it exports to more than 150 countries. So especially the vaccines. These are childhood vaccines used in the immunization programs of various countries. So the capacity to manufacture vaccines in India is huge. So as far as my information goes, so the current manufacturing capacity for COVID vaccines, which the manufacturers have allocated, is about 1.5 billion doses. And many of the manufacturers are further creating more capacities. And by the time the vaccine hits the market, so we may see further capacities. And also, depending upon the need, so existing capacities may also be shifted to coronavirus vaccine manufacturing, which will further enhance the capacities. So what does that mean? So that means, so India not only caters to the domestic market, but also will be in a position to cater to the world market. The Honorable Prime Minister in one of his speeches has already stated so that it will not limit the vaccine to itself. India would certainly will supply the vaccines to some of the countries. So the government policy also will come into play. As on date, so if you ask, so what is the, so generally the question comes, so when the vaccine will be approved, and then so that you will be ready to do your logistics and all those things. So as I said before, two of the studies are under phase 3. One is in advanced stage, and then other one is kicked off. So I cannot tell you the exact date when the vaccine can be approved, because as we see, we have seen so many issues and then stumbling blocks, and slowly the manufacturers have overcome these things, and they are in the right path for rolling out these vaccines. But what the government of India has done, so government of India has made a provision for the manufacturers under the condition, if any of the vaccine product is under clinical development, then a provision has been created that the manufacturer can start manufacturing this vaccine and stockpile these vaccines. These stockpiled vaccines cannot be sold. They can be sold only after getting the approval of the regulator, as and when it happens. So as far as the Indian manufacturers are concerned, so we have already issued permission to a couple of these manufacturers to stockpile the vaccines. So we can all assume that so they might have already started manufacturing, and certainly some quantities might have been already made, and then they're kept and they're stocked, so that once the vaccines are approved, so they will be rolled out. And as far as the maintaining the potency of the vaccine is concerned, so you might be aware, but I will also reiterate that WHO guidelines, WHO has issued some certain 2 guidelines rather. So for international packaging and shipping and vaccine cold chain, so that is available in the net. So everyone can go through these WHO guidelines. These guidelines apply not only to international transportation, so they generally apply to the domestic sector also. Once you go through the requirements, they have very detailed requirements regarding what are the packaging standards, what are the type of packaging class A, B, C, so what are the temperature monitoring devices, so and then labeling requirements, standard shipping and arrival procedures, route and arrival dates, some templates, documents which need to be maintained. So all these things have been mentioned in the WHO guidelines. So if you some of the transporters or logistic companies might be aware if they have been doing that earlier, but those who intend to enter into the vaccine transportation, so I would strongly recommend to go through these guidelines, so that it is our responsibility to ensure that the potency of the vaccine is preserved during the transport, even though the manufacturer may take utmost care. If there are some excursions from the prescribed temperatures, then it will affect the potency of the vaccine, and in turn the whoever taking the vaccine will not get the required protection from the vaccine. Uh, so that is the most utmost thing. Of course, the vaccine manufacturers, if they supply to the WHO or maybe national programs, they use something called VVMs, vaccine vial monitors, uh, which are used to see if any temperature excursions have been done, which are beyond the prescribed limits. Sorry, and also use of data loggers and temperature monitoring. All these things are, you are aware, they are being used in the transportation of the vaccine. Um, I think so. This is what I have right now. Before winding up, and then I would like to summarize. So, three important points from my point of view. So, preserving the potency of the vaccine is the first important requirement. Uh, Reduce the transportation time so that it can be reached to the farthest at the minimum possible time, and then economically feasible solutions. So, these are the three important um, areas which I would look at, and uh, the logistic companies would be heroes to for delivering all the COVID-19 vaccine to across the world. And uh, the from the Indian perspective, the availability, I mean, import of vaccines from other countries, I don't expect that much, except maybe one case or so. As on date, I only foresee only one case wherein because one of the vaccine is being developed in Russia and clinical trial is being carried out here. So I foresee only that vaccine which needs a minus 18 degrees centigrade. So otherwise, the Indian manufacturers will cater to domestic market, but our Indian manufacturer will certainly also cater to the entire world. So the Indian logistic companies should try to uh, organize themselves to supply these vaccines to the entire world, maybe 220 countries or so. Okay, so with this, I close my talk. So thank you, all the organizers, for inviting me to this webinar. So, thank you, Surya.
Thank you, Mr. Ranga. Before I let you go, I have a quick question for you. So there is a possibility that the government may look at fast tracking the process of, rolling out the vaccine. So if the government looking at a chance of, say, conducting rolling review of available vaccine data, and is there really a provision for rolling review of by the regulator?
See, rolling whatever the approvals we are giving, either phase 1, phase 2, or phase 3. So these are generally can be considered safely, can be treated as a rolling review itself. So what you are talking might be regarding the emergency use authorization. So in case of emergency use authorization, normally what we expect is that the phase 3 should be completed and there should be reasonable safety and efficacy data. So then only from the regulatory point of view, we'll be satisfied. But in case the government decides that emergency use can be had, so because there will be some vulnerable population are there, like frontline healthcare workers or maybe senior citizens, so who are more prone to the coronavirus infection. Maybe if the government decides that, so then, because as I said before, stockpiling is already permitted. So at any moment, the manufacturers will be ready probably to deliver the vaccines.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Ranga, for your forward-looking statements and for setting priorities for the logistic companies in terms of preserving potency of the vaccine, reducing transportation time, and economically feasible solutions for the industry. We will now move on to the next keynote speaker for the evening. Over to you, Reggie, to introduce Ms. Vandana Agarwal to our participants.
I'm extremely sorry. I think there was a problem on my audio. I just would like to repeat and welcome Ms. Vandana Agarwal to the session. We're extremely honored to have Ms. Vandana Agarwal, Senior Economic Advisor at the Ministry of Civil Aviation, Government of India, join us for this the summit. Madam Agarwal has been a source of inspiration and strength for the logistic industry, particularly air cargo sector. She has a keen interest to listen to industry's concern and makes every effort to facilitate with various government departments to make sure that the air cargo sector gets its due. She has been instrumental in getting some of the unique pilot projects on cargo movements through Kolkata Airport, and has been an ardent supporter of the concept of creating digital freight corridors for key Indian export commodities. Time and again, she has complained that the Indian air cargo sector is punching way below its weight. I do agree with her, and sometimes the regulator is way ahead and the industry is doing the catch up. It's now time to listen to her. Madam Agarwal, the screen is yours.
Thank you so much, Reggie. In fact, with that introduction, I think there's nothing left for me to say. And I may add that after hearing Dr. Ranga Chandrasekhar, there is really the air cargo industry and other logistics who are listening to this webinar. They have got all the information that they could possibly need. And I'm sure they've already jotted down every action that they need to take. I say this not simply because, as was expected, India has a huge vaccines, not just to its humongous population, but also to the rest of the world, having served only 150 countries. And now that we have to go perhaps to 240 countries, that is the major task left, which appears to be unbridgeable, which is to establish cold supply chains to these countries as well. It is nobody's, I think, decision that everybody in this world must get the virus vaccine that is being developed. If we find, frankly, that it doesn't reach the last corner, I personally feel that somewhere or the other, we would have, I won't say murdered somebody, that's too strong an expression, but not been compassionate enough to supply it. So there is a commercial aspect to the vaccine, but equally there is a non-commercial aspect to the vaccine that must be borne in mind. And that when I say for the vaccine, I also mean for the logistics that reaches out to provide this to the last man living on this earth as well. So no matter how remote that person is from accessibility. And I'm tempted to say that when India has taken up its vaccine programs, we have reached the highest and the remotest corners of the mountains that we have. We have reached the deserts, we have reached remote islands, we have reached communities which are very remote to the rest of the world, in the sense that they are shy communities. We have reached all of them. And if India can serve this vaccine to 1/6 of humanity, which it does on a yearly basis, then I think we are well placed to serve it to others in the world who may call for it from us, and with whom the government may have already tied up to supply. It is not a personal property, I feel. It is it is a community property and it must be dealt with accordingly. So I would say that there are 9 C's that in the logistics side, we must look at. The first one I have already said, which is the compassionate C. Second is a controlled environment, which has already been spoken of by Dr. Ranga. The cold supply chain, which is unfragmented, which is end-to-end, because as again he had said, we need to make sure that the potency of the vaccine does not get affected. That we don't take shortcuts and maintain the quality of the logistics, because our scientists and the scientists the world over have done backbreaking work to provide us with a vaccine. I'm not saying it that it has already been done, but it's so much in advance stages that it's kudos to their efforts. It's kudos to their innovative and creative abilities that we in the logistics sector now need to show that we can be equally creative and innovative in supplying this vaccine to every part of the world without any breakage in the chains, so that the potency of the product is not affected. The innovativeness is also needed for meeting the cost requirements, because as again Dr. Ranga said, the economic viability is also a very important component. And frankly, we will be reaching this to the poor and those who can ill afford expensive medicines, not just in India, but also in the rest of the world. So it's very important that we look at it as I said, not just with compassion, but a quality environment is created through controlled conditions for the cold chain supply. The fourth C to my mind is the capacity that we offer in providing the logistics. So that is not just your air freight capacity, but the terminal capacity, the equipment handling capacity that we have, whether it's cool dollies, whether it's the containers which can withstand the temperature requirements, or which can maintain or be in compliance with the temperature requirements that would be called for. And also the rest of the what I would call soft requirements, whether it is the IT software that needs to be developed, whether it's the skilling of the personnel who would be needed. I know you would say that India has been handling vaccines for so many years and you would already have it. But here I'm talking about looking at specificity and upgrading the skills of those people, developing the IT frameworks or the support platforms that are needed so that we don't waste time in making this available to the needy all across the world on an immediate basis, and depending upon the single dose requirement, multiple dose requirements, those will be handled as a matter of routine. It's extremely important actually for the world not to be greedy where oneself is concerned, but to see as to who are the people who need to get it first, simply because they are either at high risk or they are our saviors. As Dr. Ranga was saying, that it's obviously a government policy that would be taken. And I hope that the world at large will also take a judicious policy for each of them. It's very easy for every government, I'm sure, to corner or to buy up even the stockpiles that have been created, approved and created for serving interests which are slightly different from those that may be commanded. Then the next C is, I would say, is collaboration. In any field, whether it in the aviation chains, we found that India was able to very quickly cobble up and meet the requirements of the PPE kits, the other essentials, the agri-perishables. Everybody needed food. Everybody was sitting at home. It had to be delivered virtually to their doorsteps. And we found that our air freight industry and really did a phenomenal job in making sure that not only were they the saviors of the aviation sector, but they also were, so unified in providing the required supply chain. So it's kudos to them. And through you, Reggie, I would really like to place my appreciation on record for the Indian air cargo community system. I'm sure I don't have the authority to speak for the world, but I can readily say that whenever I called up, for instance, Frankfurt Airport, they were all readiness to be with us. I'm taking a single name simply because we have a representative here. It doesn't mean that others did not. There are some who were who needed a little bit, I think, who still need a little more understanding. But by and large, we found in important countries for us that they were all ready to collaborate. Then we need the cooperation as well. Somebody is weak, so you need to pull up the next person and strengthen them. So the cooperation requires you to look beyond yourself as well. So I think that is the next C that I would put. And finally, I would say that the ninth C is communication. If we don't communicate with each other and we don't make it known as to what is required, we would be, in some sense, not putting together our best foot forward in serving the world, in serving our country at a time which is unprecedented in its, most of us have not seen it. My grandparents have not seen such a time. I'm sure during Spanish flu in 1918, many people would have faced a similar situation, but I think this one is really something alike and yet something different. So we need to be sure that we are able to meet the challenges. Now, having said that, while the Indian aviation could deliver on the requirements when the pandemic was initiated, came into being, and there was, we could meet all the challenges to the manner born, in fact. But here we are in a situation where it's important that everybody gets their fair and equitable share in providing the air services. They have an equal stake in the game. And I think it's, Reggie, you have, in a sense, put across what is my biggest fear, that deals will be done to the exclusion of many who would need to participate in this in a far bigger way. And it's important that we stop that. But I'm sure things will settle down and India will remain positive, 100% positive in how it approaches the issue from the logistics side. The commitment is complete, and so we would participate in every possible stage of the development. Now, what is our advanced preparation? I think on the regulatory side, we are trying to see as to which are the areas where the logistics related regulations might come in the way, whether it is for disbursement of the vaccine, whether it is in terms of just the multimodal connectivity with the air sector, whether it is in terms of the storage environment or any handling environment. Are there any regulatory impediments? We're trying to ensure that those are swiftly removed. The second is that wherever there are infrastructure bottlenecks, we are trying to, again, address those. That's physical infrastructure, IT infrastructure, human infrastructure. I've spoken about that earlier. And then, of course, the air connectivity and the handling equipments. Is there a problem with them? The handlers themselves, do we have them in sufficient number for the requirements? Of course, the best mapping will be done only when we have some idea about what are the daily movements it will entail. That is, what is the volume and the weight of the vials and the containers in which it would need to be carried. So once we begin to have some of this information, then there is a much better handling of the preparatory phase of the transportation of the vaccine. And I'm sure that in due course, we will get it. Some of the packing instructions, as has been mentioned, are already out, but I'm sure we would need to see how these will get tweaked once we have a better sense about some of the finer details so that these can be handled. I will just conclude, I think, and I'm ready to answer all questions, is that in this particular transportation challenge or logistics challenge, there is a intergovernmental or inter-organization coordination also that is called for. For instance, we have our Ministry of Health and Family Welfare. We would have our Department of Pharmaceuticals. We would have our Ministry of Shipping, the road transportation and inland waterways, for railways, for the multimodal connectivity to the factories which we have, or the manufacturing plants. But on the air side, we have, I think, a good possibility of doing test runs also to see if we are capable of maintaining the potency and meeting all quality and time requirements. The costs I will leave to the logistics chains and the stakeholders. I'm sure they are wise enough to meet the requirements. I thank you.
Thanks, Madam, for setting the context.
One more thing one thing I forgot to mention, that the quality would require our logistics, which is something they have not 100% done, is meeting the real-time tracking That is a vital part of the quality that I mentioned. But I wanted to mention this word because I would like our logistics industry to be mindful of it. I thank you.
Thanks, madam. I have one question, and I just request anyone in the panel of speakers, if anyone of you have a question, please get it ready. So I'll ask this question to madam, and I can take that next question from the panel of speakers. Madam, you actually said the tone right. You actually blended well the commercial and non-commercial intent. In this case, you actually topped it with the compassion as on the top of the 9 C's, which supposed to be I think the aim for all of us. Like the way that we have the emergency use authorization. As of today, we still are unsure about what is the vaccine that's going to come out, when that's going to come out, what is the kind of capacity that is required in terms of the air freight. Would there be any kind of discussion, or would there be any kind of plan in terms of making that convenience of moving that vaccine cargo, temperature controlled vaccine cargo from the airports which are closer to the manufacturing sectors? As of today, Hyderabad and Pune seem to be the places where we have some of those vaccine candidates which are actually undergoing clinical trials, and those would be the vaccines that would be out for distribution as and when they get the final go ahead. Is there anything being discussed or planned at the Ministry of Civil Aviation level?
Well, I can just say that whatever physical capacity to airlift is needed, that will be provided for sure. Whatever terminal capacity is needed, whatever connectivity between the manufacturing entity and or his warehouse to the airport, that will be seamlessly provided. That beyond that, I cannot say at this stage. I can just assure you that we have looked at a number of options and possibilities, and those will be taken to their logical conclusion in a timely manner.
Thanks, madam. Really appreciate your time. I hope that you would have time to stay back for the rest of the discussion. We have interesting discussion, one-to-one interviews, followed by roundtable discussion, and then finally a panel discussion. So I hope that you would be able to join back if you have time, and otherwise the recorded videos would be available for you to watch later on. Once again, thank you very much for being part of this.
Thank you for inviting me.
Okay, with that, we are actually moving into the next segment. Before we move into the next segment of one-to-one interviews, where we have a live Q&A on cracking the 2020 code for vaccine distribution, we just take a look at a beautiful video from Emirates Cargo Airline. Thanks. It's back to over to Surya, my colleague, for the next segment. Back to you, Surya.
Thank you, Reggie. And here we are at round one of the In the Spotlight segment. In this segment, we will have candid talks with our special guests to understand their levels of preparation for the vaccine distribution. Let me introduce my first guest before you. She is Yulia Seletaria, the Global Director for Pharma at Airbridge Cargo Airlines. Yulia has been associated with Airbridge Cargo for the last 15 years. And Airbridge Cargo, part of the Volga group, as you may have seen in the video, is one of the top 10 players in the transportation of pharmaceuticals by air, and is also an active member of industry associations and special initiatives such as the Pharma.aero and the Pharma Gateway Amsterdam project. Welcome, Yulia.
Thank you.
Without wasting much time, let's head straight to the questions.
Sure.
Yeah. Yulia, can you run us through some of the key developments taking place at Airbridge Cargo over the last 6 to 8 months with regard to temperature control transportation?
Yeah, sure, Surya. So I think the main objective for us, like for a lot of other airlines and in general logistics stakeholders, was to quickly adjust all our internal processes to the new reality, to the ever-changing situation. We had to take quick decisions to change the network schedule, to make sure our crew is not under the risk, because we could not afford that for sure. And yes, we have surpassed already in the first, I think, 8 months of this year, we have surpassed the numbers of temperature controlled shipments of 2019 by, so I think it's about 45,000 tons right now. But it's not entirely our achievement, of course. It was caused by a lot of disruptions in the global industry, a lot of passenger airlines, thousands of them are grounded, and so on. So of course we had to make sure that sorry, we have fleet availability to cater all the needs, increasing requirements and needs of the market. And one of the main things we had to keep in mind when adjusting, changing the network and destinations is to make sure we're also not disrupting the existing business, because there is immunization program, there is vaccination program, insulin transportation, and so many more life-saving pharmaceuticals that are being transported. So we had to make sure that PPE transportation is not overwhelming. Of course, we did have a lot of charters, but what we tried to do is to make proper balance, to find the balance between charter operations and scheduled operations. It's not only Airbridge Cargo that have dedicated all their efforts to the new reality, but also Volga Dnepr with big airplanes like Antonov 124s and Ilyushin 76, and our Atran with 737 freighters. So we really have utilized the complete power of the group of the companies to cater all the needs. And we have increased our like expertise by developing a new structure for healthcare. And we all know 2019 was not so good year for the global logistics. So we had made already some changes in 2019, and it somehow helped us to adjust ourselves quicker to the current situation in the beginning of this year.
Right. As you mentioned, Airbridge Cargo has always been involved in the transportation of pharma products and, in fact, vaccines as well. So I believe you must be better prepared to handle the delivery of COVID-19 vaccines when they are ready for distribution. What, according to you, are some of the extra levels of preparation that you may have to undertake with regard to the mass movement of COVID-19 vaccines?
Surya, I will be very open here, and I do not want to sugarcoat this, right? Because I'm thinking that, and I think a lot of people will agree with me, that one participant, we're just one small, important, but small segment of the complete chain of the logistics. And if I say that we as an airline are 100% prepared, well, it's good, but it's not solving the main topic, the main problem, right? Because there are some airports that are not as prepared. There are some, a lot of actually ground handling constraints. There are problems with even amounts of dry ice for ultra cold transportation of the vaccines. There are issues with the road feeder to deliver the vaccine to the very remote areas of some countries. So that is why I think the main topic for us and the main objective and target for us is to make sure that collaboration is not only a word that everybody is using, and I'm pretty sure people will use this word still a lot of times during this conference, but it's something that we actually are doing and implementing internally and externally. So to prepare ourselves better for the vaccine, we have incorporated the so-called vaccine task force a few months back in our group of the companies, and we are working on 4 main directions. Number 1, internal expertise and internal knowledge of the vaccine distribution and development. And we know there are so many variables still there in regards to which packaging solutions will be used, which transportation temperatures, which trade lanes, and a lot of other questions that are not yet answered. So then we're also working with our container providers. A lot of them are invited today, I have seen already. So active and passive solutions, we're doing a lot of work, internal work with them, meeting every couple of weeks via Teams or Zoom to discuss some of the topics. Also, we are speaking to the freight forwarders, of course, to the airports, to the manufacturers of the vaccine. So to make sure we are combining all this accumulated knowledge and to make the game plan that will actually work.
Right. You just stepped on to my next question on, you have been in constant dialogues with all the different stakeholders, and with your, with container providers as such, you would need to understand the kind of container reserves that you would need for such kind of transportations. What are these conversations primarily on? Does it involve customization of containers, better visibility? What are those points?
This is a very, very interesting topic, actually, and a very good question, because I will explain why. We are talking to the freight forwarders, we are talking to the manufacturers of the vaccine or pharmaceuticals in general. And the main concern at the moment, which I'm sure some other speakers will maybe elaborate a little bit more, but the main concern of the pharmaceutical companies that are not heavily involved in COVID-19 vaccine production or development is, will there be enough containers to accommodate our main cargo that we are transporting already since ages in these containers? Or will the container providers will use this opportunistic approach and will just, provide the containers primarily to the vaccine, and then, so to say, leftovers will be going to the to regular traffic of immunization programs and so on. And that is exactly the questions we are also discussing with the containers. And all the providers have ensured us and will continue ensuring us that this is not going to happen. They will try to be distributing the containers as equal as possible, not to have this priority lease or, just to give some priorities to some companies. So, and we do hope that, first of all, there will be enough containers to cater all the needs. And secondly, it will be equally distributed. And we're working closely with, like I said, with all providers, also not to only on a regular commercial transportation, but also for some repositioning of the equipment. This is very important, right? If you're flying to some and delivering vaccine to some remote airports, because we all know that our network is really nice, but the people that need the vaccine are not always based around or living around these big airports like Frankfurt or Hyderabad, right? There are much smaller airports, much more remote areas, and we will have to deliver the containers with the vaccine there as well. And we will have to make sure we are returning these equipment in a timely manner. So this all is being discussed on a regular basis with all container providers right now.
Okay, that's great. Now shifting focus to the certifications and recertifications that are happening for the IATA CAIV, and you've also rejoined the Pharma.io initiative. How do you see such certifications and participation in industry initiatives really upping your bar as an airline offering temperature control services?
The certification in general, if we take just CAIV certification right now, that's a great thing. It for sure it helps to maintain the quality, but certification is a piece of paper in the end of the day ultimately, and if you just hang it on the wall and just look at it every day, it does not help the quality. So my firm understanding is that people have to glass for production of the vials, and even the big machinery, vial production machines that have been traveling from Europe into the USA, for example. We have seen a lot of vaccine production equipment traveling from China into Russia, Middle East, Europe, so these trade lanes. And we do see this surge and need to transport even more of these commodities, because I do believe that some countries are speaking openly already about this, and some pharmaceutical companies as well, that the vaccine production itself might not be the largest bottleneck, but the lack of the vials, lack of the syringes, the needles, and all these supportive commodities might become a bottleneck. And we also need to make sure we are supporting here with our freighters as well, for sure. Yes.
All right. And you earlier spoke about collaboration and how stakeholders need to join hands. What kind of collaborative efforts are you looking from your supply chain partners?
I mentioned the very first question from yours, or the second one, I think it was about which stakeholders are we talking. So I do believe that all these stakeholders that are creating this chain, each and single fragment is creating this chain of logistics. We all need to speak, but actually to exchange their opinions, exchange each other's headaches, because we do understand that we are sometimes flying from a very sophisticated airport with a huge pharmaceutical centers and huge expertise experience. We are flying to a very, I would call it simple airports with very low capacities, no experience, no expertise. And we need to find this balance. How do we make sure that we are not spoiling the vaccine somewhere in between in this transportation chain. And for that, we don't only need airlines, we need freight forwarders to talk to us or to each other. We need the airports, even various airlines to speak to each other. Yes, we are competition, we're all commercial organizations, but that is an unusual situation right now. We all need to talk to each other. We do participate in some of the big like associations, like you mentioned, Pharma.aero, as well as Validate, which is the risk assessment program, because we do believe that to have this global picture of which airports are really well equipped and which airports do need a little bit support, because we cannot say, you know, we are ready and the airport is not ready and we don't care. This will not work out. So we need to find some backup solutions. We need to have contingency protocols in place, which we are having already and which we're implementing by finding some backup solutions like reefer trucks if there is not enough capacity, or backup ground handling in the same airport if the ground handling capacities are not so large. So steps like this.
Thank you so much, Julia, for sharing your perspectives. Wish you all the best for the times ahead. And I would like to call upon Reggie again to introduce our next guest. Over to you, Reggie.
Thanks, Surya, for that interesting conversation with Julia. Like to invite Andreas Seitz, the Managing Director of DOKOSH Temperature Solutions. Andreas joins us live from Frankfurt. Andreas, can you turn your video on?
I'm just coming. Yeah, I cannot.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, now it's working. Okay, yeah, okay. Yeah, hello. I don't see me. Hope you see me.
Yeah,
okay, yeah, hello. Yeah, perfect. Thank you very much.
We can see you well.
Yeah, excellent. Thank you, Rich. Nice for joining this interesting session. And I listened carefully to what Julia said. It was very interesting.
That's good, because you have your containers flying in the airbridge cargo freighters.
Sure, yeah.
Okay, just for those in the webinar participants, Andreas is the managing director of DOKOSH Temperature Solutions. DOKOSH Temperature Solutions was founded in 2013 and has focused on the rental of fully air-conditioned opti-cooler air freight containers for the transport of high-quality, temperature-sensitive pharmaceutical on intercontinental flights. Andreas, so nice to have you with us. Thanks for making time for us.
Welcome.
How busy have you been in the last 4 to 5 months, ever since you knew that there is the COVID vaccine is in the making and that would actually come into to be transported across continent? How are you watching that space?
Oh yeah, that's a very good question, because our current business was not so much affected, of course, by this discussion, because as Julia mentioned already, there is a huge existing business for life-saving medicine that's since years running, and what we saw, it was an additional demand, in particular during these lockdown phases and a higher demand for charters. So it changed the business a bit, but COVID the vaccine is not here yet, so we are more was in a situation where we thought, okay, what's then finally coming? And that is really, there are so many questions still on the table. And we try to prepare ourselves as much as possible. A little bit what Julia said, a lot of discussion to gather information, to understand how everybody is preparing, which role we could play. So that is, it was quite a load of work, yes, but it's more in discussion and in information and so.
Andreas, vaccine is something that's already being transported around the world because there is quite a number of vaccines that are meant to be administered at different parts of the world for various diseases. Now, this is something that is completely new, and this is in a scale that is no one has really imagined. Any specific kind of conversation with your customers, not specifically the airline, but other pharmaceutical companies reaching out to you, looking at what is the possibility of container solution that could fulfill the demand for different types of potential COVID-19 vaccines? Do you have conversation with pharmaceutical companies?
Yeah, we have conversation with pharmaceutical companies. I mean, we are constantly in relationship with the pharma companies, because these are the ones who need to qualify the container, who decide on the packaging solution that they want to use. So they play a very important role. It's to a certain point quite difficult, because for the time being, it's even for them. If you ask them which will be the first vaccine that comes on the market, and nobody can tell you. I mean, and even if it comes to the temperature range, that it also sometimes not clear for all and every vaccine. For some it is, yeah, and we are pretty sure that it will be a big portion in the 2 to 8 range. Yeah, this is the classic range for vaccines, and also that will be here. But there is a lot of uncertainty still around the logistic procedures and the trade lanes, and even on the production sides and the volumes. So it's currently a process on getting step by step a clearer picture on what will finally come. And what I can say, it will really become a challenge for the entire aviation industry, and also because of we have this lack of belly capacity, which will still be the case for the probably entire next year. Definitely during the winter and the first quarter, and in parallel to the vaccine campaigns, we expect a world economy to start growing again, you know, after the lockdown phases. So we expect really a high demand for air cargo in general, which in addition for the vaccine campaigns. So that will be a challenge for the entire industry. And so we don't see that much, Julia mentioned it, not that much as a sales opportunity. That's not the case. We see it really as a challenge for everybody, yeah, to manage this process. And collaboration is really key, yeah, because if it comes to container supply, you know, we have standard procedures, yes, and that works pretty well. We have standard rental terms, but if we want to really speed it up, it's that much about the turnaround time of containers. You know, it's a big difference if they are 14 days out or 4 days out. Yeah, you can imagine that you can just ship the double or triple amount of vaccines if you use the containers more efficient. And this is about cooperation with the logistic companies, the forwarders, and the airlines to use the existing assets. You cannot simply double the amount of containers within a couple of months, yeah. And you can in particular not if you don't know how long this demand lasts. Lasts it a half a year or 1 year? You know, I need to fly my containers for 10 years. Yeah, so that's why the key is to focus on the efficient uses and the as short as possible turnaround time.
Yeah, it's Andreas, it is right that you can't like produce. I just wanted to ask whether have you ramped up the production of your containers? But if that's not really possible and you can't really ramp up and your containers are meant for the intercontinental routes, but how have you kind of reworked your container leasing program, which allows much faster delivery and access to some of the assets for some of your assets for the airlines?
Yeah, that's really a point. You know, first we have improved our internal procedures so that we have our internal turnaround time, you know, the checks and the repairs and the maintenance to speed it up really, so we can release a container pretty soon. for the next trip. And then we have also extended our global presence, which is also important. So then we can have the containers. We have it mainly in Europe and also a significant amount in the US. And we are going to have also depots in India, which will play a major role in this vaccine supply. So that means we also ramped up our container fleet, yes, yeah. But I'll give you just an example. If you can reduce the turnaround time significantly, it has a much higher effect instead of producing 100 or 200 more containers. That's just a one-time effect, yeah. So we focus on the turnaround time and need for this, of course, the airline partners and the logistic forwarders in the boat, because we have to manage this process all together. Julia mentioned it. The repositioning is an important thing. Yeah, can you fly containers or charters to a certain probably remote destination, just offload it and return it with the same flight? These are the questions that needs to be discussed. Yeah, instead of leaving it in a remote airport and then try with a lot of effort to get it back over a couple of weeks. Yeah, these are the type of questions to overcome this challenge.
The Dock-Cash containers are actually built to be fail-safe to carry pharma, temperature-controlled pharma shipment between the range of +2 to +30 degrees Celsius, and that can withstand any ambient temperature of maybe 55-60 degrees Celsius in Middle Eastern airports on the tarmac, for example. One of the important thing is about the track and traceability of these containers and the built-in capability, the built-in digital capabilities of these containers to be tracked by shippers and by customers. Any significant development in terms of improving your digital capabilities on these containers, because that's going to be an important feature going forward.
Yeah, that's right. That's a big subject, the online tracking of the container. We, as everybody else, are working on this, but this is not a thing that can be performed very quickly by a few reasons. The first thing, it's a big fleet. So if we equip all our containers with those tracking devices and so on, it's hardware. It simply takes time. Yeah. And the second issue why it takes time is we have these restrictions for active sending devices on aircrafts. Yeah. So that means even if I build in this device into my containers, I have to get the approval by every single airline, which is a bit of a challenge if you run a pooling system. Yeah, this simply takes time. So it is important, and we are working on this. I don't know if we are ready with this in a half a year or so, so probably not when the vaccine campaign starts. But I would also not, to be honest, not overrate it, because what we only can do with a container tracking is to track the container. But as you know, the container often does not cover the full end-to-end shipment. It's often an airport to airport, or probably a logistic warehouse to logistic warehouse. So there is often several last miles, and that anyway needs to be covered. And what we see and what's the case today is that the pharma companies put lockers to the cargo for the temperature locking and also for the tracking. And so that is a thing that works anyway and is not that much related to the container tracking itself. So it's an important matter, the container tracking, but there are also other solutions. You can put a tracking device into the cargo, and that also works really from end to end.
Andreas, with the potential opportunity for Dock-Cash or container solutions like your company, for many others, particularly from the COVID-19 vaccine, particularly in the 2 to 8 range, temperature range, have you been looking at or have you been doing trade lane risk assessment, because India, as you said, you've been a part of one of our event last year. You looked at India as a market. You have some of your customers actually flying. United is flying to India to different destinations within India. Have you been looking at and evaluating and assessing in the trade lanes?
We do not really evaluate specific trade lanes because we look to the production site and where the production sites are. Yeah, and this are a few sites. It's not spread around the globe. We see it in Europe, in the US, in India, probably in Japan, and that's it more or less. So we need to be where the export and the production of these kind of vaccines or medicine at all takes place. Yeah, and the advantage of the active container, it's not only the opticooler, for all active containers, is that it is extremely it operates very independently from climate scenarios or from the environment. So we do not focus that much on trade lanes, because it doesn't matter for an active container if you fly from cold to hot or from hot to hot via Dubai, or even if it's extremely hot, you mentioned it. So we do not focus on trade lanes, but on the exporting sites. And there we did the evaluation, yes, but the picture is still not really clear. And it's mainly because nobody knows where the production really starts, which vaccine will get the approval first. And then we will see a huge run for this vaccine that gets the approval first. And then it is important to be there where the production of this vaccine is. And so the thing is, we have a certain fleet. We are extremely flexible. We can put the container within a couple of days to any place worldwide and to support any production. And so we think we are well prepared together with our competitors. Everybody plays its role, but all together, I'm pretty confident we can manage it.
Andreas, the last question in terms of what kind of innovations are happening at DOKOSH in terms of product enhancement, design, the robustness of the container. Maybe potentially the COVID vaccine is going to be of various types. Are you looking at container solutions which are of different nature, different from what you already have in your product portfolio?
To be honest, not really. We focus on to expand our network, so to have the opticooler really available for every trade lane. So let's say these pharma companies are global players, and if they qualify an opticooler for one lane, they would also like to use it for other lanes. So that's why we focus on a global coverage. But there is currently no technology at the horizon that is much more efficient or much better than the existing battery-powered air-conditioned solution, for active containers. So we don't see that. That's why we focus on a global coverage. In technical improvement, yes, there is a continuous improvement. One is the digital tracking of the container, but we will stay with the 228, mainly 228 range, and because this is the most difficult range to manage, because there you have to be very accurate, and we don't have plans to go into the minus range, because that is mainly about dry ice, and it's more simple because it usually does not require a very accurate temperature. If you say minus 20, then it could also be minus 22 or minus 23. It's not so fixed, but the 228 is very specific, and we think this is really our focus and our core competence.
Thanks, Andreas. All the best, and hope to see you soon in India, maybe in one of our events.
As soon as I can travel to India, I would love to do. Yeah. Thank you, Raji.
Thanks, Andreas.
Thank you.
It's back to Surya to bring the next speaker onto the spotlight.
Thanks, Reggie. Our next guest for today is Sid Chakravarti. He is the founder and CEO of a very interesting company called StatWig. So StatWig was founded 4 years ago with an aim to solve the problem of global wastage in vaccines and food caused by the inefficiencies in the supply chain. In December 2018, the world's largest procurer and distributor of vaccines, UNICEF, decided to explore what StatWig had to offer and made a $100,000 investment in this company to work on the smooth delivery of vaccines to children in need. In fact, StatWig is the only Indian startup that has made it to the UNICEF program. let's find out from Sid how he looks to address issues like black marketing of vaccines or hoarding of vaccines in the current scheme of things. Welcome, Sid.
Thank you, Surya. Thanks a lot for the introduction.
Okay. Hope you're having a good evening so far.
Yeah, fantastic. It was quite exciting to hear all the speakers. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Sid, can you quickly run us through your journey so far, and also about the vaccine ledger that we've been hearing? What exactly is that, and what really prompted you to devise a solution for the track and trace of vaccines?
Okay, yeah, sure. So I started the company in 2016 after I moved back to India from California. So the early engagements or early projects that I got involved was in the rural India. So one of the biggest challenges in the rural economy was how do you ensure quality and safety of the products that are getting delivered to the children. So this is the true last mile of vaccine delivery, right? So we looked at, so we tried to understand that problem a lot more deeply, and we designed a solution. So that's how Vaccine Ledger was created. And as you said in the introduction, the solution has been recognized quite well. So we got selected by UNICEF. They funded us in 2018 and again this year. And we in just a couple of months ago in September, we signed a long-term agreement with UNICEF so that we can provide a solution in nearly 120 countries without going through the RFP process. And we've been also supported by Gavi, which is another big organizations in the vaccine world. Gavi and UNICEF work hand in hand. Gavi procures the vaccines, UNICEF distributes them. So yeah, I mean, it's been quite a good journey so far. And so to go back to the solution, what Vaccine Ledger actually does. So what we try to do is take a product-centric view. Let me explain it in a simple way, right? So if you are getting a vaccine, you want to know whether it's safe and good quality, right? But the way you want to do it is you want to basically see what temperature it was stored in, transported in, whether it's a real product or a fake product, or whether it's expired or not expired. So these are like some of the things which are very important for an end user. But if you look at the data that is collected, starting from a manufacturing unit all the way to the last mile, we track data in different bits and pieces. And we collect data at a different levels of aggregation and disaggregation. What that means is vaccines don't travel alone. So they get grouped and ungrouped several times into different packaging, different formats. So how do you really know whether this particular vaccine has been through good temperature throughout the journey, right? So it's really difficult. So you have to go back and figure out which container was it in, which airline did really transport. So which is very difficult today. So what we did is kind of created a digital ID for every dose of vaccine. If you have a unique identifier for a vaccine, kind of like a unique identifier per person, now you can tag data against it. So at every point in the supply chain, if it's at a pallet level or a secondary or tertiary packaging level, so what our software does is create an aggregation, disaggregation layers. So we group serial numbers into based on their packaging levels, and whatever data that we are collecting at a container level or at an air cargo level or at a manufacturer level, we link them back to the serial numbers. Now, so what that basically does is if you type in a serial number in our solution, so it pulls data from all the different sources that has been collecting data about it and provide it in one place, so that you have a complete history of where the product has been, how it's been stored, how it's been handled. So that gives a lot of trust about the quality and safety of the product.
Right, very interesting there. So, how will the learnings from these, you've done a lot of pilot runs also on the Vaccine Ledger.
Yeah.
So how will the learning from that be utilized for the transportation of COVID-19 vaccines?
Yeah, I mean, so vaccine supply chains are extremely complex. A lot of ingredients come from China. India is the largest manufacturer of vaccines. Then it's sold in different way in higher income countries, and sold in a different way and distributed in a different way in lower income and middle income countries. So our work majority has been on the lower income, middle income countries through UNICEF and Gavi. But what we have seen basically is it's impossible to get everyone on board from the getaway. So the supply chain involves a lot of stakeholders. So the way we designed our solution is we don't need everyone on board to collect valuable information about a product. So whatever data that we get at different touch points, let me give that as an example, right? So we have manufacturer and UNICEF on board, and we don't have any logistics providers in between those two on board, right? So we only have the manufacturer. We know when they ship the product, and we know when UNICEF has received the product in one of the countries. So even that information, if you look at the extended supply chain, UNICEF then distributes that product to a local NGO, and the NGO hands it over to hospital hands it over to the person. In the extended supply chain, even that information is extremely useful. How it moved from manufacturer to UNICEF, what serial numbers moved from one party to another party. The more participants we have, so if you have the airports in between, if you have the container information in between, it makes the solution much more, the data much more richer, and you get a lot more deeper, you can get to perform a lot more deeper analytics. But so the way we designed is, hey, even if like we have gaps in the supply chain where we are not collecting the data, so we can still provide very rich contextual data that can generate actionable insights. So that's been a big learning, and so that's how we have modified our solution to make it work in very complex environments.
Right. And Sid, we have reached a very important juncture in technological evolution where the right tools, resources, and optimism is present.
Yeah.
We've been leveraging on technologies like IoT, AI, and blockchain for the track and trace of vaccines, as you said. And in fact, Ms. Vandana Agarwal, just before, during her keynote, she mentioned about the need for real-time tracking. Can you explain the potential of such technologies and how technologies like blockchain can drive equitable distribution of vaccines?
Yeah, absolutely. So you're absolutely right. So I mean, these technologies have become very important, primarily because they have become more available. So I mean, we were tracking products using data loggers, temperature tracking, but I mean, so they're quite inefficient. So it's not real-time data. You can only get data at the end, and no one knows if anyone is recording that data anywhere. But things have changed because of how connectivity has improved and how these sensors have become cheaper. They're still expensive in a lot of cases. You still can't have a tracker at a unit level or at a dose level, but it's still possible. So the technology is evolving quite rapidly. Now you have opportunities to record more data and automate a lot of data capture. So one of the biggest problems in the supply chains is there's a lot of manual errors. So now if you're collecting data automatically, you're removing that possibility. So that also improves efficiency and makes supply chains more resilient. Where blockchain plays a very important role, particularly in COVID-19 vaccine distribution, right? So it solves, I mean, so COVID-19 is very interesting. So right now it's politically motivated, it's economically motivated. So there's a lot of complexities going around how the vaccines will be distributed and bought and distributed. But if there is, but at a larger, from a larger perspective, there's a consensus that, hey, there should be a fair distribution of vaccines. But how do you really make sure that's happening? So if there is a technology which can take care of saying that here's the immutable records of how much went to this country, how much of the what percentage of those vaccines, what exact serial numbers went into the frontline workers, how were the other vaccines distributed. So if you have that record, that if you have a technology which takes care of building that transparency on behalf of you, so that simplifies a lot of efforts that we have to put in terms of ensuring that, hey, the vaccines are getting fairly distributed. So that's where I think the technology plays a very big role in like making sure, taking this burden away from people, and the technology saying, hey, I mean, I can handle some of the workloads. So I can record where exactly these products are getting sold, how are they getting distributed, who received them. So that way you're ensuring fair distribution of vaccines.
Okay. Sid, do you think there is any need, or there are any prerequisites that need to be in place before the vaccine delivery actually begins?
Yeah, so what's been happening in the pharmaceutical world is something called serialization, which means they've been moving away from batch numbers and moving more into serial numbers at a unit level. So every dose has a unique identifier. So so it would be interesting to see if they're going to implement that for COVID-19 vaccines. If it's going to be too much or too much of an effort, or some regulations are going to enforce it, because that would really ensure complete traceability. So if you can identify a dose with a unique identifier, you can track it all the way to an individual who is receiving it. So that kind of completes the entire loop of the vaccine. So you can complete, so we know we can track which manufacturer created it, when did it reach an airport, when did it reach the other airport, when was it loaded onto a truck. So we can capture the entire journey information if that is available. The second thing is a lot of data right now is closed data. So there are, there are a lot of sensor companies which are collecting information, but the data is not easily exported into or shareable data. So that's a big problem overall, not just for COVID-19, but from a larger collaboration perspective as well. Hopefully that that would change, but with sensors coming in, so there are a few sensors coming in which can track at a dose level, so that might provide tracking all the way to the end. But we are looking at many ways in which to make the solution have much more richer data while keeping the cost low. So we don't want to increase the cost of the vaccines as well. Solution.
And how are you looking to address concerns such as black marketing and hoarding of vaccines? And how do you really detect counterfeit vaccines?
Yeah, so the solution is basically what it does is at each point it captures several data parameters such as chain of custody and temperature, the contractual details between two entities, what products have been transferred from one stakeholder to another stakeholder. So we capture kind of like exactly how many serial numbers moved from one stakeholder to another stakeholder in terms of custody. So that gives us a good picture of where exactly these serial numbers are and who should be the right owner of a product. So if there is any anomaly in the supply chain, so if you are seeing a serial number which is not supposed to be there, where it was scanned, so we can like basically the software has the capability to identify such anomalies and alert people that, hey, there's something wrong with this. It was not supposed to, it's not a valid serial number, or it was not supposed to be in this market. It was supposed to be sold in a different market. So yeah, but counterfeiting is a big problem. So we're not trying to solve it completely, but we are like creating or empowering stakeholders with enough data to make much more smarter decisions to detect counterfeit products. But we're no way like eliminating it completely. It's a very big problem. There's every time there is a new solution, people will find a clever way to try to break that solution. So we need more advanced technologies to completely battle it.
True.
And I think it's going to be a big issue with COVID-19. Both black market and counterfeit products are going to be very big issues with COVID-19 vaccines. I think we need very strong measures, security, both physical and at a software level, to ensure the safety of these vaccines.
Right, that's right. My final question to you, where do you stand now in terms of your funding, and are you looking at further funding to scale up your operations?
Yeah, we've been working closely with UNICEF and Gavi for the last 3 years, and so we've been funded by them so far. So we started fundraising because we're seeing a lot of traction now, because our solution kind of is in the right place at the right time because of COVID-19. So we started fundraising just 3 weeks ago. We actually received a 500K so far. So I think we're raising very quickly because of there's a lot of interest in this area, and it's kind of like like the need of the hour, so to speak, in a lot of countries which doesn't have digital vaccine supply chain management solution. So we are actively fundraising. We've been lucky to get some funds already in place, but we would be needing more, I think, as we scale and grow quickly.
Okay, thank you, Sid. All the best to you for the times ahead. Appreciate your insights today. Let me call upon Reggie to introduce our next guest. Over to you, Reggie.
Thanks, Surya, and thanks, Sid, for that interesting conversation. The last guest for the first round of one-to-one interview on the Spotlight is Mari Groeneveld. He's the Chief Commercial Officer at SkyCell. SkyCell is a Swiss-based